Welcome back to another live question period with yours truly, David Krayden. Thank you for watching. Hope we got a good crowd today. Wednesday, we usually see, you know who? The Prime Minister. Should see Pierre Poilievre. If he's absent during the week, it's usually just on Fridays. Although he wasn't there on Monday. So I guess the big story today obviously remains the capital gains tax and how incredibly the Liberals have tried to sell this as fairness, tax fairness. I mean, do you? Well, of course you believe it, and I believe it too. But it is still, there's a degree of unbelievability about this because when you increase a tax from 50% to 66.7% on properties beginning in value at $250,000, that's not the super rich. That's not the so-called wealthiest Canadians. Try buying a cottage north of Toronto. It's at least $250,000. You can't buy a house for $250,000 in most of Canadian cities that's in any way a respectable place to live. $250,000 is not indicative of great wealth. I mean, people have to make at least that in a combined salary to be considered comfortable in these days. So if I decided to invest my money, and this is not something I've been able to do, but I have friends and family who did do this, who decided to invest their hard earned money in a property that they could sell for their retirement. Maybe they don't get a big fat pension plan from the federal government like these members of parliament, these liberals do. And they've got the gall to say, oh, the conservatives voted against the capital gains tax increase because what have they got a problem with fairness for? Why don't they want the super rich to pay their fair share? This is such a crock. This is such a crock. And I'm glad the conservatives stood their ground on this and said, this is not about taxing the super rich. This is about taxing the middle class who decided or had to put their money into this kind of investment because the government wasn't going to come through with a big fat pension, or they didn't have access to a pension plan with their company, or they didn't work for the federal government or the provincial government or the municipal government someplace in Canada. They worked hard and they invested their money, and now the government's going to take 2/3 of it away. 2/3 of it away. Because fat cats like Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, who are the wealthy, especially Justin Trudeau, how much in taxes do you think Justin Trudeau pays every year? How much of his money is safely secured in offshore banks? I don't know if it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's got tax shelters galore. And if he's got his money sheltered in places where it can't be touched by the Canadian government. Paul Martin did that. He was another liberal who was all for fairness, although he was certainly nowhere near the hypocrite that Justin Trudeau is, or Chrystia Freeland. These people are jokes. Let's listen to this great exchange from question period yesterday, where I think Poilievre nailed it in terms of capital gains tax increases being about insanity.
Today, Mr. Speaker, there is an opportunity for everyone in this House to stand up and ask the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little more when they sell extremely profitable investments. We are doing that on this side of the House. The Conservatives will be protecting the advantage that is there for the wealthiest Canadians while we invest more in housing, while we invest more in dental care, while we invest more in Canadians who need it.
Hear, hear.
His nose is getting longer every day.
Speaker, if you are a small business owner, you have even $1 of investment gain, you pay this higher tax that the Prime Minister is promising, because there's no exemption inside the 300,000 small businesses. And it's incredible that during a housing shortage, he wants to tax home builders. During a healthcare shortage, he wants to tax away our doctors. During a food price crisis, he wants to tax our farmers. And while our economy is shrinking more than any other economy in the G7, he wants to tax our small business job creators. Mr. Speaker, isn't this the definition of insanity?
Hear, hear.
You bet it is the definition of insanity. Another definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's exactly how Justin Trudeau operates. Keeps pushing up the taxes, spending the money, and expecting it to have some positive effect. He keeps talking about investing in dental care. Yeah, right. For people who don't or can't use it. And besides, stop taking my money away and spending it on projects that I didn't approve. Now, you didn't approve. He talks about investing in housing. Yeah, right. How come there's people homeless across Canada? How come there's soup kitchens galore? How come people can't afford to buy a house? How come the price of a one-bedroom apartment in Ottawa is like $2,000 a month? I don't know anybody working at a minimum wage level who could afford that. I mean, seriously, that would take up all of their general income with nothing left over to eat. That's Trudeau's Canada. If I sound outraged today, it's because I can't stand the hypocrisy anymore and the bullshit. Excuse my language. But that's all it is. From a twerp of a prime minister and a twerp of a finance minister who have the gall, the audacity, the nerve to say that if you don't support their 2/3 theft of capital gains, that somehow you're not for fairness and somehow you're in cahoots with the super rich. What a bunch of lies and crap. What a crock. These people in the liberal hierarchy, these are the ones who are in with the super rich. And they're the ones supporting the globalists who want to just drown us in spending. So we finally say, save us. World government, save us. That's what's behind all this. I don't know how much Trudeau bargained for when he became prime minister. He was a bit of a different person then. Yeah, totally insouciant, stunny ways, Trudeau. But he's got a narcissistic edge to him now that is so much harder because he's become a clone of the globalist leader. He has been molded and shaped and produced by the Klaus Schwabs of this world and the globalists of the World Economic Forum and those other groups that are pushing us in their direction. Justin Trudeau has become a joke. I want to just listen to John Barlow explain how capital gains is all about killing the small farm.
Member from Foothills.
Well, it's still not reassuring that the agriculture minister still doesn't know that there's going to be a capital gains inclusion rate change that's going to impact Canadian farmers. Farmers who are trying to work hard every day to feed Canadians. And the only thing that this tax change is going to do is feed an obese Liberal government. They say this is about fairness, but it isn't fair to young farmers. When they buy the family operation, they are burdened with millions of dollars in debt. This is a gift to the ultra-rich who will buy up family farmland, making mega multinational industrial farms. Will the Prime Minister admit this is not a tax on the ultra-rich, this is an attack on the very survival of family farms?
Yeah, it's an attack on family farms. It's an attack on farmers who want to own. And thank you, Happy Go Lucky, for gifting 5 Krayden is Right membership. Thank you so much. Your support is appreciated. Hit that like button now. Please do. Give us the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Resubscribe if you must, because YouTube is always taking subscriptions down. As my friend Clayton Morris tells me, Redacted gets it all the time. And I should be on Redacted today actually talking about the spy scandal and a couple of other things. So we're going to go to question period now, but make sure we don't miss anything.
We don't interrupt them as we
And
go.
like I say, please like the station
finally have a report that lays out the
and the
issues
broadcast.
of
I really
veterans.
appreciate
This
your,
matters because it is the first
I really appreciate your help and support here. We're just about starting. I that was a false alarm. Sorry about that, but North Island, Powell River. I grew up in Comox, BC, not far from North Island, Powell River. I haven't been back in quite a few years. I don't mean like 20 years or anything, but maybe 10. And I'm afraid to go back because BC has become a cesspool of drug abuse, socialism, environmentalism, and craziness. So I'm afraid to go back to my hometown where I was the public affairs officer for the Air Force Base there for 6 years. And God only knows what it looks like now. I still have a lot of friends who were there, but I recently read about how homelessness is just all through Vancouver Island. It's just incredible to me. And there's people sleeping on the streets, and there's people going to food banks. And it's just probably not the town I grew up in or worked in the military. But anyway, we should be starting momentarily here.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi.
No, I'm wrong
Mr.
again.
Speaker,
Well,
I am proud
gonna start
to mark
putting-
the 40th anniversary
putting your
of
comments
the
up.
Maison
Sorry, it's
d'Hébergement d'Épannage
taken me
de
a little while to
Valleyfield.
get the
It's a
comments.
shelter
But,
in my riding.
so
4
thank you
years
for
ago, some
appreciating
great
it, Pam.
community builders made the
As I-
choice to help people experiencing homelessness and in crisis. One of the great builders of the shelter is Émile Duhamel, whose contributions were invaluable. I say invaluable because he devoted his life to improving the lives of others, especially
we
the
got
lives
something
of
about
those forgotten by society.
Comox. Yeah.
Attention, hey. L'honorable député de Salaberry-sur-Roi peut recommencer.
I'm not quite sure what
The
that means.
Honourable Member
Comox
for
hate us from
Salaberry-sur-Roi
Alberta.
can start again from the
What
beginning.
do you mean? Everybody in
Mr.
Comox
Speaker,
hates you?
I'm proud to mark the
That used to be
40th
a military
anniversary of the
town,
Maison
Cynthia, so
d'Hébergement
I don't know.
d'Épannage de Valleyfield, a shelter
And it
in
was
my riding.
Reform Party
40
town
years
for
ago,
many
some great
years
community
before it
builders
went back
made
to
the decision
NDP.
to help people
I can assure
experiencing
you, I don't hate
homelessness
you. I'm from
and in
Comox,
crisis.
and I hope someday
One of the great
we go back
builders
to a
of the
restored, sane
MHDV shelter is Émile
West
Duhamel,
Coast
whose
that's
contributions were invaluable.
free of
Now, I say
socialism
invaluable because he devoted his life to improving the lives of
and
others,
wacko
especially the lives of
environmentalists.
those forgotten by society. From the very beginning and through the past
Why
40
does
years,
this,
his
you know,
involvement has been
they go
unwavering.
on with
Above all, he
these
has
member
contributed to the
statements
expansion of
now for
services
literally
beyond the shelter,
20
such as
minutes.
an emergency shelter,
They were supposed to be
many
15
other
at one
shelters
time.
and centers. He's also participated in significant
And
projects,
here we
such
are, it's
as a
2:21.
warm-up
They're
spot
still
during the
nattering on.
winter. And what's the key to the shelter's success? Their skilled team, which is firmly convinced that every human being is worthy of respect, consideration,
Anyway.
and dignity. There's so much solidarity there, and it's more necessary than ever. I hope the shelter will continue to thrive for
Yes,
another
I know
40
the base
years.
is still there, believe me.
Mr. Speaker, after 9
I'm-
years, this NDP Liberal government just isn't worth
My
the
father
cost
was
of
a-
food. And with food prices out of
served
control,
there
it's
as a
bewildering
fighter
that Liberals
pilot.
choose to attack the farmers and
My
ranchers
best friend
who grow and raise Canadian
grew up
food.
in
First, they
Comox
impose a
with me,
costly
and he's
carbon
a,
tax, causing a
last
food
I saw,
price
he was
crisis.
a
Then they threaten fertilizer reduction mandates.
general
And now
officer
they are
in the Air
hiking
Force, and he
taxes
was a fighter
on
pilot
farmers.
out of
This
Cold Lake
latest
for
tax
years.
hike is an attack on
So
Canadian
it's
farm
a
families
great
and their
town,
ability
beautiful town,
to
but like I
keep
say,
producing food.
it's too
Something that
bad
will inevitably drive
the
costs
NDP
up.
and
it will
the
be wealthy hedge
other
funds and
left-wing
foreign investors
woke
that benefit from this policy because they'll buy up
wacko
our farmland
environmentalists
and
have
food
destroyed the
processing.
province
The
to the
Liberals
degree
are
they have.
driving farmers and ranchers out
I
of
actually remember
business. But I'm being
when there
asked
was a
by these
social
folks
credit
whether this is
government in
calculated
BC that
policy or pure and simple
brought together the
economic
free enterprise
stupidity.
forces
Either way, Canadians and
and
Canadian farmers
kept the
deserve better. Common sense
socialists
conservatives have a plan that
and
will
the
bring
extremists
together
out of
everyday
power.
Canadians to bring home a tax system that actually
And that
lowers
was a
taxes.
long time
Mr.
ago, I
Speaker,
know.
that's just common sense. Let's break.
The Honourable Member for Surrey Newton.
Speaker, this past weekend at Princess Margaret,
I could have showed you about 3 more
Secondary School, I
videos. But
attended the 6th annual ceremonial review of the 278
it's just amazing to me how
Royal
long they
Canadian
go on now.
Air Cadet Squadron,
Anyway.
led by Commanding Officer Captain Amar
I see
Tiwana
that.
and Chair
I'm
of
just
the
going to shut this
sponsoring
guy up
committee,
for a second while
Siva
I continue to
Pawla.
flap my gums. I see that Elizabeth May, and I don't trust Elizabeth May at the best of times. I really think her judgment can be skewed by, well, you know what. And she's saying she's seeing the top secret unredacted report about spying, and she doesn't think it's a problem. Oh, there might be one retired MP, but nobody sitting in the House. So why did the report, as we read it, suggest that that's not the case? It just didn't include the names. I think she's totally off base about this, as usual. So, I mean, don't believe a word Elizabeth May says at the best of times.
To acknowledge people, of course, that are visiting. We're happy they could come and visit us today, but the rules state that we're not supposed to acknowledge them. It happened on 3 different occasions during
today.
SO31s today, so I just want to remind honorable members of that. Oral questions, question oral.
Finally, for God's sake.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Bloc voted in favor of another tax increase by the Liberals to take money from Quebecers and give it to the centralizing government of this Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister thanked them literally after the vote with a thumbs up. Is that the Liberal Bloc coalition? Less money for Quebec home builders, less money for Quebec entrepreneurs, less for doctors and entrepreneurs, and more for the federal Liberal colossal government. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government understands the importance of fairness. We understand that a teacher should not pay higher taxes than a multimillionaire. We also understand
repeating the BS.
That our decision will give $3 billion to the province of Quebec, additional money that the province can use to invest in healthcare. But the Conservatives don't like healthcare. They don't like investments by the government.
Leader of official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this tax increase supported by the Bloc takes money away from doctors, forcing Quebec doctors to move elsewhere. The regions of Quebec will have fewer doctors. During a cost of living crisis, the Bloc has voted to tax farmers more. The Bloc has voted for a tax on home builders. How is it that the Bloc and the Liberals want to tax Quebecers more to give more money to a big centralizing government in Ottawa? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers understand the importance of fairness. They understand that it is very important for a nurse to not pay higher taxes than the ultra-rich. They also understand that we need revenue to invest in healthcare, in daycares, and the province of Quebec needs that revenue as well. That is why the province has decided to do the same thing we are doing federally.
Yeah.
9 years ago, the Prime Minister promised that taxing and spending more would make everything fair. Since then, Canada's had the worst growth in the G7, the worst in Canada's history since the Great Depression. Housing costs have doubled, rising faster than any other G7 country. So 76% of youth believe they'll never be able to afford a home. 1 in 10 people are at eating at food banks in Toronto, where there are 256 homeless encampments. Haven't the Liberals learned that taxing away doctors, taxing away home builders, taxing away the entrepreneurs who make paychecks is economic wackoness?
Economic wackoness.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all certainly learned something yesterday. After 8 weeks of dithering and evasion, we learned which side the Conservatives are on. They had a chance to be very clear and say a teacher or a welder should not pay tax at a higher rate than a multimillionaire. But they just couldn't help themselves. At the end of the day, the Conservatives are always on the side of those at the very top and always against working people. That's what we saw yesterday.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member mentions welders. Welders start businesses. Among the 300,000 small businesses that are targeted by this tax, according to the minister's own published documents. So those welders will pay a 66% tax on their investments, the same welders that build the homes that we're going to need.
Order. I'm having trouble hearing the question. I'm having trouble hearing the answer. So I'm going to ask honourable members to allow the questions and answers to happen.
You know, keep squashing these liberal lies about the wealthiest Canadian.
Mr. Speaker, the member mentions welders. Welders incorporate. They start small businesses, welding businesses that build things, welding products that go into apartment complexes in which people live. So when the member taxes the small businesses that help us build the housing, she not only kills jobs for those welders, she actually kills housing when we are in a housing shortage. How could the minister possibly think it's a good idea to tax home building in a housing crisis and farmers in a food crisis?
I'm going to ask for the quiet in return. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, for one thing, the Conservative leader should get his facts straight. Of course, what we are talking about is a 2/3 inclusion rate, not a 2/3 tax rate. But he never bothers to actually get his numbers straight. What he also doesn't bother to do is to actually stand on the side of working people. He has been faking his support for workers, but yesterday workers learned where he really stands, and that is not with them.
That's right. That's for sure.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
She always looks so annoyed.
Taxing farmers during a food crisis, taxing home builders during a housing crisis, taxing away doctors during a healthcare crisis, and taxing small businesses during an economic growth crisis is economic vandalism. And nothing less, Mr. Speaker. That is precisely why this minister has given us the worst growth in the G7, the worst growth for the next 40 years projected for the OECD, and 256 homeless encampments in her hometown. Isn't that the predictable result of her disastrous policies?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, do you know what the average income in Ottawa Carleton is? Because I do. It is $58,400. The average person in Ottawa Carleton could only dream of earning $250,000 in a given year. But the Conservative leader thinks his average constituent should pay tax on their hard-earned salary at a higher rate than someone who is earning more than $250,000 in capital gains.
So that means everybody in the Ottawa Carleton, the average worker is living below the poverty line. That's how ludicrous that assertion is.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The road
That
to
is worth
hell
getting
is
later.
paved with
Let
good
me see,
intentions.
20
The Liberals want to tax
Nope,
the capital
blockhead
gains of
time.
the rich, but their simplistic definition of who the rich are catches Quebecers like small investors and individual entrepreneurs. The Bloc Québécois will propose amendments to correct this. For example, to offer homeowners who are not real estate speculators access to a higher one-time exemption rather than the annual exemption of $250,000. Will the government commit to working with us to avoid raising taxes on the assets of Quebecers who are not ultra-rich? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for the question. Mr. Speaker, I would like to begin by thanking the Bloc for their vote yesterday for tax fairness. They understand, like Quebecers understand, the importance of solidarity, social solidarity, the importance of fairness. They understand that a teacher should not pay higher taxes than the ultra-rich. It's very unfortunate, but the Conservatives don't understand that. I'll wait for a little bit of silence. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. It's not complicated. Raising taxes on the ultra-rich? Yes. Raising taxes on the savings of the self-employed who have invested everything in triplex? No. These people have nothing to do with the real estate bubble. They have nothing to do with the difficulties of first-time buyers. Come on. Come on. Order, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The Honourable Member for La Prairie can start the question again. It's not complicated. Raising taxes on the ultra-rich? Yes. Raising taxes on the savings of a self-employed person with no retirement fund who has invested everything in triplex? No. These people have nothing to do with the real estate bubble. They have nothing to do with the difficulties of first-time buyers. So the Liberals have a choice before them. Work intelligently with us or hurt Quebecers who aren't ultra-rich to score political points against the Conservatives. Will they make the right choice?
Now that's a good point, Keister Street. This is savings that people have already paid tax on. This is double taxation. And Freeland talks about people making $250,000 a year. This is money that they've invested over the years. This is not a yearly purchase. She is such an airhead.
Important measure, a measure for fairness, a measure that will fund investments that are so important for Canada. Important investments for Quebec. The province of Quebec will receive $3 billion thanks to this measure. I think healthcare will really benefit. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis is everywhere. Seniors are sleeping in their cars. People aren't able to afford skyrocketing rents. A recent report tells us why. Affordable housing
clearly the Bloc is trying
at an
to
alarming
have it
rate
both
throughout the
ways
country.
now
It's
because
simple.
they realize
There's
the Liberal
little
argument
or
is just
none.
sheer
The Liberals and
stupidity.
the Conservatives have abandoned
Even a
social
blockhead
and
can see
affordable
through that.
housing. It wasn't profitable for their speculator friends, it seems, but people need a roof over their heads. What are those two old parties good for if they can't even guarantee a basic need?
What the hell are you good
housing?
for except propping up Justin Trudeau? Alberta cowgirl. Yeah, I've been saying that for
The
years.
Honourable Minister.
The Bloc should never be sitting in
Thank
the
you,
House of
Mr.
Commons.
Speaker. I thank my colleague for his question.
And it's a
I'd like
travesty.
to remind him that there's a measure
They have
in
no
the most
business
recent
being there.
budget, and it was highlighted by different stakeholders. We've put $1.5 billion to take housing off the market, to ensure and reserve affordable housing off the market for people who need them. That's what we've done, and we'll work with all nonprofits, with municipalities.
All right, you might have a point there,
to
Pam.
increase the number of affordable and social housing units. Thank you.
Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Tenants at Thorncliffe Park and across the country are rising up against corporate greed that is causing skyrocketing rents and resulting in evictions and rising homelessness. Renters cannot keep up with the costs of these unfair corporate practices, and the Liberals themselves are partners in making these rental units unaffordable. This is a violation of the human right to housing. Why is the Liberal government partnering in these exploitative practices and causing harm to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, where's Randy
Mr.
number
President,
one?
I want to thank my colleague for her question, and I want to say to her and to all Canadians that are watching that this government was the first government that made historic investment in housing. But not only that, we recognize the human right of a house, and we have for the first time named a commissioner to defend the
You
right
don't have a
of
human right
tenants.
to a
We will
house,
continue to work with all
moron.
provinces and
Boy,
municipalities
these people
to
are
defend those
incredibly
rights.
stupid. Happy-go-lucky,
The Honourable
yeah.
Leader of the Official
You bet
Opposition.
they're going to offer universal basic income.
The
That's
bloc
the
is now
last
condemning the
thing
same
he has.
tax increase that they just voted in favor of. Mr. Speaker, it seems that they are changing their position.
That welders won't have to pay this tax. Only the 0.13% wealthiest. Well, all the economists contradict that. The fact that she has 300,000 businesses that she admits will be taxed and all of their owners will be taxed contradicts that as well. So there's one way we could solve this controversy. Will she commit to put in law that no one in the bottom 99.87% will pay any new taxes?
Yeah, that's a very good point. RF, very good point.
Mr. Speaker, a moment ago, the leader of the opposition already demonstrated his financial illiteracy. He does not understand how the capital gains inclusion rate works. But I want to offer him an opportunity to continue his economic education. Yesterday, the IMF
What a condescending woman.
on the Canadian economy. The IMF commented on our capital gains move and said it makes the system more fair, and also said it will have no impact on investment or productivity.
Well, that is nonsense.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Look at her. What a smug
I think we should just
excuse.
Let's put aside the disagreement and even the debate on this, and let's come to a resolution here that will bring a lot of calm to the millions of Canadians who are worried about their taxes going up. The minister claims that only the 0.13% wealthiest Canadians will pay. So why not just enshrine that in law? Will she commit today to pass an amendment to her tax bill stating that no one whose income is in the bottom 99.87% will pay any new taxes at all?
Good one.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to quote some interesting words that were stated in this House of Commons. Quote, the monstrous increases in capital gains are making the rich vastly richer and creating a kind of
Distraction time, Chrystia.
Do you know who said that, Mr. Speaker? The member for Carleton.
She won't address the valid question asked because she knows she's standing on a pile of BS. She's sinking deeper into her pile of manure with each question.
Mr. Speaker, we're simply asking the minister to put her words into law, okay? So she's claimed that no one who earns less than the top 0.13% of income in the country will be affected. So once again, will she amend her bill to say that no one who is in the bottom 99.87% of income earners will pay any new tax increase whatsoever? Yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's review what we've learned
Yes, they voted last night and it passed the House of Commons.
The leader of the official opposition doesn't even understand how the capital gains inclusion rate works.
Yes, that's right.
That's a problem. Second, the leader of the official opposition disavows his own words in this House about capital gains. But probably the most important thing is that the average income in Carleton is $58,400. Their MP is not on the side of working people earning that wage in his own. That is shameful.
The Honourable.
You are the shameful.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just quoting right now from her own budget speech, where she said, for 99.87% of Canadians, there will be no extra capital gains tax. Okay, she put it in the word, in her speech. So why won't she put it in the law?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Oh, Freeland's had it. Freeland's had it. You can't tell any more lies today.
I'll try it in French.
It's a total moral implosion.
Order. The Honorable Government House Leader.
You simply can't do it. So it's this jackass's turn.
Around this place without really much contact with the outside world. In the 9 years that they've been over there, they voted against a child benefit, a dental plan, a prescription drug plan, a child care plan. Every time Canadians look to that person to stand up for their interests, for fairness in Canada, that guy takes a seat, Mr. Speaker.
There's not a seat big enough for your fat ass.
I see they pulled the finance minister off the ice. She can't answer
Exactly.
the question. So she mentioned she won't guarantee in law that the bottom 99.87% of Canadians will pay nothing. So let's make it a little bit easier for her. She claimed that she doesn't want welders to have to pay more. Will she amend her bill to ensure that not a single welder anywhere in Canada will be forced to pay this tax increase? Yes or no?
I love it. This is good
Minister.
political theater, but it's also great stuff to watch.
The more I stand here, the longer question period takes. Yeah,
The Honorable Minister of Innovation.
She won't get up to that one either. They sent Squeaky up.
Generational fairness is key to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and that's why in the last budget we presented measures, Mr. Speaker, measures to build this country, measures to invest in our economy, measures to invest in the middle class, measures to help Canadians, Mr. Speakers. And you know what? Our capital gains change will help Canadians. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, can you believe they voted against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker? Against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker.
Look at Freeland nodding away. Thank you, Big Brother, for bailing me out. For saying nothing except a bunch of measures. Something to measure the size of your fat head.
Are they okay over there?
They're a little wacky.
I won't call them wacko, Mr. Speaker. That's unparliamentary. But I just have a very simple question. And this is for the finance minister if she's not still in hiding. Very simple question. She said she doesn't want welders to have to pay more. Will she put an amendment in her tax bill saying that not one single welder will face a tax increase?
Hey, quiet down. The honorable government house leader.
Speaker, in any given year, 0.13% of Canadians will pay a modest increase in their taxable gains. But I hear the leader across who has never seen a support for a single Canadian that he is prepared to vote for, talking about sidelining people. He sidelines that entire caucus in every single question period. We hear from him yawning and misinformation all the time, Mr. Speaker.
Freeland nodding her stupid little head. Oh, thank you again. Because I can't get up and say anything because I look like an idiot every time, a condescending old school marm. So we'll get other liberals to stand up and look foolish. That's the best question period we've had in a long time. Maybe because there's some passion in the House.
Order, please. Order.
Finita.
Are we done? Are you done? Not done? All right. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Pagode. Mr. Speaker, La Presse described this morning the fiasco that is the CARM application by the Border Services Agency. CARM is like ArriveCan, an app with cost overruns reaching $300 million and counting. Just like with ArriveCan, the CBSA is also behind its development. Just like with ArriveCan, The KRAYDEN'S firm, now suspended from public tenders, had a small contract in this. In short, a new app, same fiasco, same people in charge, same government. What is the minister doing to get the agency back in order? It's the Wild West there. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we understand very well the concern of exporters and other Canadian businesses that deal with the Border Services Agency. That is why we have delayed an aspect of the implementation of the application. I'm fully aware of the concerns, and I will ensure the Border Services Agency proceeds in the right way. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. The CARM application is like Arrive Can, a money pit. What's more, it's like Phoenix. It doesn't work. It's a total disaster. It's serious because it's supposed to collect customs duties at the Canada-US border. $3.5 billion flow across the border every day. Imagine the mess if the application doesn't work. That's why, back in March, the International Trade Committee was already asking the agency for documents, including their contingency plans. It's now June, and we've received nothing. Will the minister force the agency to provide the documents so that we can correct this fiasco? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, of course, I will ensure the agency provides the committee with all of the appropriate documents, the documents requested. I've also had a number of discussions with the Border Services Agency in order to ensure the scenario our colleague is talking about doesn't happen, and I will continue to do this work myself with the Border Services Agency. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Liberals are demanding I stop asking questions. I can understand why, because the Finance Minister's gone into hiding and stopped answering them. She's claimed that no one except the rich is 0.13% will pay any new tax. But the greatest university economist in Canada, Jack Mintz, has reported that 1.25 million will pay. But let's not dispute who's right or wrong. Will the minister accept an amendment to her bill to ensure that not a single plumber will have to pay any extra taxes under this proposal?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
That's really good.
Mr. Speaker, we can see how nervous and how anxious the Conservatives are. They spent 8 weeks terrified of saying anything about capital gains. And today, the Conservative leader is so anxious, he doesn't trust a single member of his caucus to say a word. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I have sympathy for them.
What the hell is that about?
They have shown how phony they are. They have had a chance to be on the side of working people, on the side of fairness. They've shown whose side they really on.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Will the Finance Minister exempt all carpenters from her tax increase? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we presented every single member of this House with a very clear and actually really easy choice. Do you think someone who makes their salary, like that person in Carleton, whose only income is their wage, who's making 58 grand a year, do you think they should pay tax at a higher marginal rate than someone earning capital gains of more than $250,000 a year? It's not complicated, but it's complicated for them.
Yeah. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Oh, she's getting mad.
Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of restaurant owners who will pay this tax increase on their very first dollar of investment gains that inside a company. That is a fact. So will who earn $58,000 a year? So simple question. If what I'm saying is wrong, there's a very simple solution. Will the minister commit to amending her bill to say that any retiring restaurant owner who's been earning $58,000 a year will be fully exempt from any of these tax increases?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there was once a conservative prime minister. His name was John Diefenbaker. He was from the prairies like me and like the conservative leader. He set up a royal commission on tax. And Ken Carter, who led that commission, said memorably, a buck is a buck is a buck. He thought that all your income, whether it's a capital gain or you make it through hard work, should be taxed. But these conservatives have shown their true colors. They are just not on the side of working people, and they're embarrassed.
Yeah. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
John Diefenbaker is from Saskatchewan, where there are lots of farmers. So the member won't commit to amend her law to exempt carpenters or plumbers or retiring modest income independent restaurant owners. So very simple question. Given that we're in a food price crisis, will the finance minister amend her proposal to say that no farmer will pay higher taxes under this plan?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the conservative leader is squirming. The conservative leader is nervous. And I know why he's nervous, Mr. Speaker, because we presented him yesterday with a very clear choice. You could be on the side of someone who sweats every day, who earns all their money through their paycheck, or you can say someone who is earning in every single year more than $250,000 in capital gains. We know whose side we're on. Now we know whose side they're on too.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
She thinks
Speaker,
Poilievre was squirming?
wants to avoid a shutdown at Canada's two biggest railways, and rail workers deserve the time needed to negotiate a fair deal. But
What the
CP
hell's a
and
Taylor
CN seem to be
backpack?
trying to orchestrate a simultaneous work stoppage in order to force the workers' hand. Now, the union has suggested staggering the negotiations in order to minimize the impact.
Just
This seems to be in
silence
everyone's
this
best
dipper for a second. That was a great exchange, folks, between Freeland and Poilievre. I might actually break that down into one segment because it just shows you how Freeland totally evades responsibility. And Poilievre got her on every area: plumbers, carpenters, retiring restaurateurs, farmers. And she would not answer the question in any of those instances. Very good exchange. Very good exchange.
For 30 years, Johannes Rivor sexually abused children in Nunavut when he was supposed to be a priest. Instead of being tried for his crimes, Rivor escaped to France. The churches failed the victims. The RCMP failed the victims. Now the federal governments keep failing the victims. He died before justice was ever served. People are still hurting. When will this government act to ensure the victims of Rivor get the justice they deserve?
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for that very important question. The sad history surrounding the abuses in the north with Reverend Rivor is devastating. Many people have been impacted, and I've been able to speak to many survivors. He passed away recently, yet it doesn't bring justice to those who are seeking justice. We will continue to work and support the families and those who survived, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Winnipeg's downtown is full of historic buildings. One of our most iconic is the old Hudson's Bay building located at the corners of Portage and Memorial Avenues. It holds a storied history for Winnipeggers. A vibrant downtown is vital for a strong economy. Mr. Speaker, over the past few months, our government has been working closely in collaboration with local First Nations to revitalize the Bay building. The ability for First Nations themselves to be at the forefront of such a development is critical. Can the minister responsible for Prairies Can update this House on the cooperative work underway? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I recently had the honor to make an announcement of $31 million investment into the former Hudson's Bay building in downtown Winnipeg. The plan was developed by the Southern Chiefs organization, includes over 350 affordable housing units, assisted living units for elders, a child care center, and amazing public spaces. I believe that the Southern Chiefs organization, led by Chief Jerry Daniels, are doing what they're doing in Winnipeg stands as a prime example of economic reconciliation that the entire country of Canada can be proud of.
A wonderful grandmother, 93-year-old Liz Diachin, is severing a few lots off of her longtime family farm to give them to her kids and grandkids so that they can have a place to live in this terrible housing crisis. She was surprised to learn she's going to be paying this latest Liberal tax increase. She was asked, "Are you rich?" She said, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm on a pension." Mr. Speaker, will the Finance Minister amend her bill so that low-income grandmothers who are passing on a little bit of land for their kids to live on will not be hit by this tax increase?
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to share another quote. The wealthiest 1% who own the most expensive and luxurious real estate and have in their portfolios the most stocks and bonds will continue to see their net worth expand, having done nothing, by the way, to deserve that expanded net worth. When they sell those
What did you
assets,
do
they
to
accrue a
deserve a
capital
fat
gain.
pension?
We think more of it should be taxed. That's a quote from the member from Carleton. But that was when he was being a fake populist.
The Honourable Leader of the Official
Well, she
Opposition.
found something there, and she'll use
Mr.
it.
Speaker, Liz Diachin is not among those wealthy 1% the member just described. She has a pension of probably, I'm guessing, $45,000 a year. She's a grandmother who's simply trying to sever off a few lots so that her kids and her grandkids can have a place to live. Those lots have enough value that they will be hit by capital gains tax, and they're over $250,000. So she will pay this, us the 66% tax. So very simple question. Will the minister amend the law so that this wonderful grandmother does not have to pay higher taxes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
No, Trudeau's not there
Mr.
today.
Speaker, I think the Conservative leader is a little bit confused because he seemed to think that those were my words I quoted. I was in fact quoting him. I was quoting his words about the wealthiest 1% and their stock portfolios and luxury real estate. But that was back when the Conservative leader was pretending to be a friend of working people. He was pretending to be on the side of the little guy. Yesterday, we learned that is just not true. But we are on the side of fairness.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that this government has unjustly enriched the wealthiest 1% with their inflationary policies. So let's just make sure that no one else pays the bill for that. Will the minister accept an amendment to her proposal to ensure that the 99% of lowest income earners do not pay this tax increase so this wonderful grandmother does not have to pay the bill?
The Honourable Government House.
Freeland will keep quoting from that old speech.
Leader
No,
opposite has spent
she's had it
the
again.
entire question period talking about electricians and farmers and fishers and carpenters.
What happened to the sound?
Yep. The Honourable Government House Leader can start from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We have to hear
the
him
leader
again?
Opposite cites electricians, carpenters, plumbers. Mr. Speaker, I come from family, as do many of us, of farmers and electricians and people who bring home a T4 slip at the end of the year. Those people who earn an honest paycheck, what do they expect from their government? They expect tax fairness. We are asking all those who pay who gain $250,000 on their investments in a given year, 0.13% of the population, to pay a little bit more. I don't know any electricians who are in that category, Mr. Speaker.
What a rock.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, if that were true, then they would be prepared to put in writing in the law that no farmer, fisher, or electrician will pay any new tax under this increase. Will they?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
What will be in the law is that anyone who makes a capital gain over $250,000, the first $250,000 are exempt, 50% inclusion rate. Over $250,000 in a given year will pay 66%. That's less than Brian Mulroney asked them to pay, and it gets us closer to the fairness that who's asking for? The electricians, the farmers, the teachers, the nurses, the fishers, the people in Canada who expect us to stand up for tax fairness and against that.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Allah, deal with these Zionist attackers. Allah, deal with the enemies of the people of Gaza. Allah, find and exterminate them all. Spare not one of them. That was Adil Sharkawi in Montreal on October 28, 2023. He suffered no consequences because in Canada, the law allows you to call for the extermination of an entire people under cover of religion. The RCMP want to modernize the criminal code so they're better equipped to deal with hate crimes. The Bloc is proposing to do away with this religious exemption. Will the minister support us? The Honourable
There
Minister
they go
of
again with their
Transport.
religious exemption.
Mr. Speaker,
More censorship.
there is no form of hate that this government has ever accepted. We will always combat all forms of hatred, whether it's racism, Islamophobia, discrimination, anti-Semitism, or what have you. Religion should not be an excuse for propagating hate, and that is why the government has its own bill to fight online hate. I hope the Bloc will support that. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the government says Canada is a secular country, but it isn't. This religious exemption is the opposite of secularism. It makes it possible to commit a crime that would otherwise be punishable by law. Does it make sense to let hate speech hide behind a god when it incites violence? Should the criminal code contain religious exemptions that couch in prayer a call to exterminate
It's called freedom
people?
of religion, blockhead.
It's not right. The RCMP knows it, and so does the government.
Give your senile head a shake.
Mr. Speaker,
it's called freedom
will
of
they
religion.
vote
Yes,
for the
religion
Bloc's
does
bill
have a place
and get
in
rid
Canadian
of
society.
this religious exemption?
You half-witted
The Honourable
block.
Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a secular country, and hate speech is not allowed or tolerated. We've always combated it, and that's precisely why we have tabled legislation to fight online hatred, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Whether hatred is in the streets or online, it does harm. It does harm to our society, and I hope the Bloc will vote along with us.
Mr. Speaker, the minister proposes this new tax increase on every single dollar that a fisherman earns inside of his small business. There is no $250,000 exemption for him. Even if he just earns $1,000, he'll have to pay the tax increase. We forget it's not just our wonderful farmers that feed us, but it's also our fishermen. Will the Finance Minister amend her bill to ensure that there will not be a single fish harvester anywhere in Canada that will face a tax increase?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I grew up in Atlantic, Canada. I grew up as the grandson of two dairy farmers. I grew up around an awful lot of fishers. I grew up around people who worked with their hands and didn't think that electricians got electricity from the sky, but rather they got it in plugged from the wall. What I would like to challenge the leader to do is he should gather all of the electricians who think that they should not pay over $250,000 on capital gains. I'll get together all the electricians who think that a buck is a buck is a buck. We'll compare.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Will they exempt electricians from this tax hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for the past couple of years, the Conservative leader has been cosplaying a friend of union workers. But yesterday, we called his bluff, and they know it. Here's what the president of the CLC said. With this vote, the Conservative leader has shown he believes that an ordinary worker flipping burgers for a living should be taxed on 100% of their income, while his CEO friends making millions from flipping stock should be taxed on only half of their income. That is what the Conservatives believe, and it is shameful.
Wow. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Union workers who have rental properties that they invest in. Will the minister make the commitment that no union worker will have to pay this tax increase?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I don't know which union workers that he's talking to, but the union workers that I talk to and that we talk to and dialogue with and that the Finance Minister just quoted are people who believe in solidarity, who believe in caring for others, who believe in dental plans and child care and the Canada Child Benefit and every other single thing that this leader has voted
Stop
against.
pretending that you speak for unions or workers or blue collar people or anybody except your elites. You are a joke.
And see what side of the equation they come down on.
The Honourable Member for Charlottetown.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians deserve a safe and affordable home. We know that people in more vulnerable situations have a hard time finding affordable housing that meets their needs. We need to build more housing and make the housing market
Right on, Mandy.
for
It is
all.
frustrating to listen to today.
Can
But
the
it was
Minister
good,
of Veterans
good
Affairs
sparring.
tell us what the government
And
is
I think
doing to
Poilievre
ensure that Canadians have
embarrassed
access
the hell
to
out
safe,
of Freeland.
affordable housing? The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend and colleague for that important question. Our government is working hard to make housing fairer for Canadians all across the country. Earlier this year in my riding, I announced $6.7 million in funding to help build new affordable housing. This funding will help house and support homeless people, as well as women and children fleeing domestic violence. Our government will always be there to defend Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Est-ce que la ministre
Would the minister agree to an amendment to her tax hike that would exempt carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and farmers? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Well, squeaky's
Mr.
up
Speaker,
again.
what I can tell you is that fairness is at the core of Canadian identity. People in Shawinigan and in Carleton understand that in a fair society, fairness is fundamental. And that's why in our last budget, we made changes to the capital gains tax, which will enable us to reinvest in the economy, in our workers, in housing. But surprise, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are against tax fairness. Imagine they're against tax fairness. We on this side of the House will always be on the side of workers and the middle class and on the side of Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
data, Dr. Jack Mintz calculated that 50% of those who will pay this tax increase earn less than $120,000 a year, and 10% earn less than $18,000 a year. No, we don't have to dispute these numbers. Why don't we just make it simple and make it clear? Will the minister accept an amendment to exempt anyone who earns less than $120,000 a year from this tax increase? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, actually, there is a $250,000 threshold. So the new rate kicks in only after you've made $250,000 in capital gains in a given year. So I do want to continue to help educate the Conservative leader. I'm going to point him to...
Boy, the sound is bad today.
So I'm going to allow the Deputy Prime Minister to restart.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, because it does seem that the Conservative leader, who for baffling reasons wants to take all the questions, maybe to show off his ignorance, doesn't actually understand.
I would ask the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister maybe to retract that and finish. I gave enough grace to allow to repeat. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, I'm sorry. I retract that. So let me just say, it was baffling to me that the Conservative leader is taking all of the questions to show he doesn't really understand what we're doing, but it gives me a chance to explain it to him. So it only kicks in after 250,000 of capital gains does this new level.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I just gave that minister more than 20 opportunities to prove that what she was saying was true. I asked her, and she refused, if she'd give an exemption to her tax hike to carpenters, farmers, fishermen, plumbers, union workers, restaurant owners, electricians. She said no. She said no to exempting people who earn less than $120,000 a year. Why? Because we know that that's exactly who she's going after. She's going to rob the people who pay the bills in this country to pay for her obese and out of control spending. Why won't she finally end the ripoff?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, our government gave every single Conservative MP a chance to stand on the side of working people, of teachers, of nurses, of electricians, of carpenters, of welders. They cannot wiggle out of the shocking position they took. They took a position on the side of multimillionaires against working people and against fairness. But now all of Canadians know where they stand.
The Honourable Member for St. John Rothsay.
Sure, I come from a community that is filled with good, hard-working people. The small city realities don't always look the same as someone who lives in big urban centers, but they do face many of the same challenges when it comes to housing. I'm proud that our government has stepped up to tackle the housing crisis. This challenge requires bold, outside-the-box thinking, including seeking innovative ideas.
How pathetic that is.
I'm gonna take a break here. Hold on. And I will allow the Honourable Member to restart. The Honourable Member from Rothsay has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I come from a community, St. John Rothsay, that is filled with good, hard-working people. Their small city realities don't always look the same as someone who lives in big urban centers, but they do face many of the same challenges when it comes to housing. I'm proud that our government has stepped up to the plate to tackle the housing crisis. This challenge requires bold, outside-the-box thinking, including innovative ideas from all corners of our country. Can the Minister of Rural Economic Development and ACOA tell us how our government is ensuring that smaller regions can play a role in the Team Canada approach to housing solutions?
Honourable Minister of Rural Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My friend from St. John Rothsay is right. Innovative housing solutions are all across the country, and that's why our government is investing in companies like Kent Homes in New Brunswick, who are doing state-of-the-art home manufacturing. Our regional development
You can just imagine this woman elbowing her way through a crowd, or being the focus of attention wherever she goes, sucking up the air in every room she's in.
The opposition leaders, we do nothing approach to housing.
Everybody knows somebody like this from your wedding,
and we are getting the job done.
or from a wedding you've gone to.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Just 3 years after our London family were murdered in an Islamophobic attack, another London family's home was set on fire. The police are investigating this crime as hate motivated, as the family publicly expressed support for Palestinian human rights. Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian racism, and all forms of hate must be condemned wherever it occurs, and this government needs to do more to root out racism so people can feel safe. Will the Liberals finally step up to provide support to my community and all those impacted by hate-motivated attacks?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
It's so funny. You got the bloc wanting to lock up the Muslims, and you've got the
racism, that we are combating Islamophobia,
and the NDP
all of our communities all across the
claiming
country.
they're victims of Islamophobia. It's what a crazy country.
Including what is
None
our
of this
now
makes any
anti-racism
sense.
strategy. We will continue to work with partners on all levels of government, including civil society, to ensure that we are supporting communities like that, members. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this government repeatedly said that the Canada Disability Benefit would lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, and in doing so, they gave the disability community hope. But now we know it was all a charade. Documents recently tabled show, by the government's own estimates, less than 2% of folks with disabilities will be lifted out above the poverty line, and not till 2028. How does the Deputy PM justify extinguishing this hope, and will she right this wrong?
The Honourable Minister.
First time in Canadian history, we have a federal disability benefit that is going to strengthen the financial security of more than 600,000 persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, the initial investment of $6.1 billion in budget 2024 is the next step to get this benefit out to Canadians. We know, Mr. Speaker, that there's more to do. We're committed to doing this work, also alongside provinces and territories, to make sure that there are no clawbacks. Mr. Speaker, we're committed to this, and we're going to get it done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that's all the time we have for question period today.
Well, that was good.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I believe if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent.
Anyway, that was great today. Nice exchange between Poilievre and Freeland. Although she had to be, she imploded a couple of times, had to be rescued by her buddies. But this capital gains tax is a sham. It is an attack on the middle class. It's got nothing to do with the wealthiest Canadians. Anybody with two wits to rub together can see that. Thanks for watching today. I've got to get ready for an interview with J.J. Carroll, which I intend to post tomorrow. This is the guy who was the former border security deputy who has documented not only the invasion of the United States by illegal immigrants, but by human trafficking, sex trafficking, that the Biden administration is directly supporting. You'll be able to watch that interview tomorrow. J.J. Carroll, of course, has been on Redacted a number of times to talk about this. He has kindly agreed to come on my show today to talk about this, and I'm looking forward to asking him questions as to whether Canada is involved or implicated in this child sex trafficking scheme, which is disgusting, and it should be well publicized. And I'm going to do my part in that. Thanks for watching today, folks. We love you all. God bless you, and I'll be back again tomorrow with question period and with my interview with J.J. Carroll.